Okay. Let's see. So, as a gay person, I think I was very aware of who I was at a very early age. And when I reflect on that era of my life, I don't know why I knew being gay wasn't good. Um, I don't know what triggers that I was receiving at that age, but I just knew you didn't talk about it. Then as I got older, you started seeing evidence of that. You know, when you go to church, church has some doctrine that's very not so positive about being gay. And then that easily translates into your community based on who you deal with on a day-to-day basis. I, I grew up in a small family. My parents were of mixed ethnic backgrounds. My dad was English and my mom was Ukrainian. They came from came from two different spectrums of lives. My dad's family was, I guess, fairly well-to-do. My mom's family was fairly impoverished. And yeah, they were, as parents, they just did the best they could with the means that they had. So growing up, it wasn't an issue. It's not like, my family talked about it or anything, but I just knew. And it wasn't until I entered the school system that you start getting involved with other people and their opinions that you just start to see, oh, I better not talk about this. So as you're getting older, especially in your teens, because in teenage years you start seeing people fractioning off, the respective genders go off and start dating. I wasn't a part of that. So as I got, into my early adolescence, I knew that I was basically, the cheese stands alone. If there were other gay kids in school, if you knew of them, you knew you shouldn't associate with them because there's guilt by association. So you really became alienated, and in a lot of ways, it's hard to find out who you are. So yourself, as an example, I think the media has a huge impact of defining what's okay. So there were really no cartoons for me growing up showing two men falling in love, one riding on a horse, kissing someone, waking up from a 100-year sleep, or any kind of Disney film like that. My parents were both male and female, so I didn't have a role model from that scenario. None of their friends were gay. So where were my benchmarks back then? Like, it was just something that was not talked about at all. And if it was not talked about in a very good light. So during my adolescent years, I don't want to call it a dark period, but I don't think I was who I really was, because I wasn't able to be. Then I went off to college, and still kind of the same thing. I had a little bit more freedom. You started seeing it a little bit more in the media. I think, well, actually, you started seeing it more in 1977, and I still couldn't relate to it, and I think there's a bit of a denial piece. When you hear such negative things, you think, oh, that's not me, I'm not going to associate myself with that. Which is too bad, because that is a big piece of who I am. As an adult male now, I know that. I love that piece of me now because it's very much who I am. But back then, I had to sort of, put it on delay or discard it because, I wasn't going to survive in the climate I was living in at the time. So then, let's see, 81, 82. So 82, I graduated from high school, and I think it was probably in 2011 that AIDS was slowly becoming pronounced in the community. But because that disease, as part of it being so insidious as it is, it incubates. So I think by 1982, when I graduated from high school, it became a media piece. So you started hearing it more and more. And they started determining they started labeling it as the gay cancer. And I thought, how can cancer just be isolated to one segment, right? There's no Chinese cancer, there's no Dutch cancer. Like, how can you pinpoint it to that specific demographic? So then I go off to college, I have a little bit more freedom, but I still feel I have to hold back to who I really am. Because, it's not something that's taught in school at that time, and if it is, it still has a bit of a religious tone to it. Although you would never know it now, I'm a very shy individual. I guess I've always been taught to be respectful in how I speak, and so I never really talked about it with anyone. So I go off to college, and things start to happen where all my friends that I grew up with are slowly getting married off. And one by one, I'm in these wedding parties, going to socials, and helping with those forums with all my friends. And once again, the cheese stands alone. I don't have anyone. So I started realizing, this is a reality I need to address. And it was very silent at that time because I kept pushing it down and thinking, I don't want to deal with this. But, life doesn't stop. And I got to the point where, you're a young man. I finished college. I started working for a major organization. And I moved out. And that moment of time created a liberty that I was really a gift. Like when I moved out, it helped me to discover who I really was. And not that my parents were judgmental, but it's different when you live at home. So it helped me to better explore places that I need to go to find people of my kind, or as we refer to them as PLUs, people like us. So I was really fortunate in meeting a group of guys who were just really perfect for me. We had same educational background, same interests. We had a ton of fun together, and I really felt, I'm home. This is so great. And yet there's still so many barriers. And I guess at that point I wasn't really planning my life. I never thought that marriage would be possible, or living in a house, or where I was going, because once again, I didn't have benchmarks to define it. I always put myself in a different category because I didn't see gay people in the media being career focused or getting married and having kids. Because there was no permission for me, I didn't think about it. But then when I came across these guys, the conversation came up. It's like, well, of course you're going to find someone. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, never thought of it before. So, you start going to your venues that are interesting. So I started going to bars and stuff. And once again, you had to be careful. Because the AIDS crisis was, I guess I came out more at the tail end of it. It was still very much a conversation. So I still kind of shied away from really getting to the community as a whole. But what was interesting about that era was AIDS was an international disease, but it was really played out more in the American platform. You really saw it in the media. And here was, I believe Ronald Reagan was the administration at the time. So he was Republican, very right-wing, very, not religious focused, but, that's pretty much their band-aid in their policing of political and legislation. And the gay community managed to lobby the Reagan regime to provide more funding to the AIDS crisis. And I have a friend who became HIV positive at that time. And it was shocking because it was so close to home. You see it in the media, but when it hits that close, like, you don't want to lose anyone, because I